Good morning guys and girls, and welcome back to another video, and today a noob's guide to 1,000,000 gold. Let's go. Okay, so there are many different types of gold farms in order to actually reach your goal of 1,000,000 gold. Some of them are more long-winded, as others are a little bit more shorter, but they require more of an investment to actually get to that 1,000,000 gold. So depending on where you're actually starting at, you can do a mismatch of different types of farms in order to reach this goal that you would like to hit. But generally speaking, for the shorter term ones to reach 1,000,000, you would need a bit of upfront capital in order to actually reach this, as opposed to the long term ones, which is an over time effect, which usually takes a little bit less time than usual to actually get to that 1,000,000 gold. So that being the case, let's run down all the different types of farms that you can do. Let's go. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to be talking about raw gold, and raw gold is probably one of the long-windedest ones ever, but it's one of those ones that you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get the actual amount of gold you're actually going to be farming. Now, if you go over to things like the Throne of Thunder, for instance, you can do this raid in just under about half an hour if you're actually decently geared, and to be honest, as level 120 it's not that hard to do. In one run you can roughly get around about 1,200 to 1,400 raw gold from one farm. This isn't a good gold per hour though. Raw gold farms are generally not good for gold per hour, but you will get that amount of raw gold in your bag, basically. This is why raw gold farming is kind of teetered off. I would like to say kind of, because there are still other ones that you can do, such as the Mogashum Vaults. The Mogashum Vault is a great one in order to actually do, because you can actually gain around about 700-ish odd gold just from the trash that you can actually get, and along with that it is a mixture raw gold farm, as you can actually farm up a decent sizable amount of Spirits of Harmony when you're actually doing this. You can average from around about 5 to 6 of these per hour, and this actual farming method actually only lasts you about 10 minutes. You literally run in, kill the trash at the beginning, and run back out once you have looted them, of course. Now, that being the case, you can pick up greens as well that you can disenchant, which can actually add to your end sum of gold. So this is a mixture raw gold farm, as you would still need to put some of this on the auction house. As I would like to clarify that raw gold farm is still a decent method of actually getting raw gold actually in your bags. That raw gold farming is still okay, it just depends on the farm that you're actually farming up. So the Mogashum Vaults, I would say, for standard raw gold farming, actually gold in your bags per time spent, is probably one of the best, because about 700 gold for 10 minutes. That's not that bad when you can actually just nip over to another alt and then start farming something else. This actually gives you a nice variety of raw gold in your bags, as well as farming up the Spirits of Harmony and the enchanting mats, which then you can later sell on the auction house for additional gold, adding on to this raw gold farm. Now, I would like to say another one, and that is selling raid boosts. And raid boosts are where you actually just get into a group with your guild or something, and you sell raid slots. Now, this can provide you with raw gold from an actual player, and they will pay you to run them through something so they can get their gear or get their achievement or what have you. Now, this is relatively okay to do, and what I mean by that is, if you're not in a guild like me, it's more difficult to actually sell these types of runs to other players, because unless you've got a massively overdone twink, then it's going to be a bit harder for you to actually sell runs of certain dungeons or heroics or mythics or whatever. So you would need, it's more of a collaboration raw gold farm, but you kind of get the point right there. That being the case, let's move on to the next farming method. Now the next farming method is gathering professions, and I always seem to go with the current content for faster gains of gold. These farms are relatively easy, so we'll take the Riverbud farm for instance. The Riverbud farm is really easy to do. You just basically run around in like a little circle-ish area in Tiragard Sound, and at the end of the day it provides you with a decent amount of materials in order to sell on the auction house. Now current content herbs actually sell relatively fast as opposed to other gathering profession materials which are older content and they don't sell as fast. This is the benefit of selling current content stuff. Current content gathering mats can usually sell really fast. You need to be wary obviously for undercuts as usual, but at the end of the day they sell faster than the older materials in question. Now going over to that, they do seem to actually have a dip in the price compared to the older world mats, but that's because they don't sell as fast, and because they're selling faster you can still make a decent amount of gold, but you're not going to get a good gold per hour on these, so to speak, as compared to the older world stuff. But that being the case, if you're actually wanting to do the long run farm of a gathering profession, then I'll definitely go over to the albino cavefish farm, which is in Deepholm, and this one is a relatively good one to actually do, and this one takes rather a long time to actually sell, but they actually, when they do sell, they actually pay off in a big way as opposed to just trying to dump the stock really cheap. Now obviously albino cavefish used for the Vial of Sands, this one doesn't sell all that often because most people actually just farm it up because you only need like 8 to actually craft a Vial of Sands. But at the end of the day, if you sell them in stacks of 8, they will sell just a tad faster, but because of convenience. But at the end of the day, they sell for a lot more as opposed to the Riverbud, mainly for the fact of supply and demand of those materials, because if they're in a higher demand, the price will be a little bit less. In a lower demand, such as the albino cavefish, the price will be a lot more because there isn't so much of that stock on the auction house. This is why I focus on older world content, because it actually provides me with more gold in the long run as opposed to the short term. Now obviously I could farm up a load of Riverbud for like a good 10 hours a week and gain a lot of short-term gold, but I prefer to actually take the other method of going for the long-run game of gathering professions for old world materials, because they actually pay off in the long run with a little bit more of a gold income over time, which actually produces me with better results in the long run as opposed to the short term. In the case with those types of farms, I do recommend that you do the Ajara's Vale farm, which is a herbalism farm, and this one usually averages around about 40,000 gold per hour, and I find that this one sells the most compared to all of the other old world materials that I sell. Now the Ajara's Vale usually sells quite fast, as not many people want to actually go into Vashir and farm it up, and along with that the Ajara's Vale actually will sell quite well because it's used to make some of the potions and flasks for the Vial of Sands. Now the Vial of Sands, obviously old world materials, are needed in this from Cataclysm, and Ajara's Vale is one of those ones where you're going to need it to actually produce a Vial of Sands. So this one is always in demand. Now most crafters of this mount who don't actually go out and farm, they usually buy this in bulk in order to actually drive down the cost. So if you ever farm up a load of Ajara's Vale, try and sell it in trade chat head and try and sell it at a little bit of a discount, maybe take off the auction house fee for obvious reasons. That being the case, let's get into flipping, and flipping is a really easy one to understand. We have the Eternal Flip, which is one of the ones that I like to do a lot, and that is by buying frozen orbs from a vendor, then trading them into the frozen orb vendor for Eternal Fires or Eternal Shadows, Life, all that jazz, depending on which Eternals are selling the fastest and which ones are selling for the most with the maximum amount of profit. Now this one can be easily done, and this one is a long run game as well, and mainly for the fact of not many people actually buy Eternals all that often, but when they do, they usually sell for like stupidly high amounts of gold. Now that being the case, I would like to move over to the TRILLIUM flip, and this one is the one for the Spirits of Harmony vendor, which is located in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, and this one is where you just buy a load of Spirits of Harmony, double check that you're actually going to make some profit on it. Obviously with most flips you need to double check which, if you're going to make any profit. Then you buy a Spirit of Harmony and you buy them all off the auction house, or you farm up through the Mogashon Vault, and then you trade them in for a profit increase, because you can actually buy a stack of 5 of TRILLIUM or white or black for 1 Spirit of Harmony. I do this quite regularly because it produces me with the most amount of gold possible, and I do very much enjoy this flip because it is so simple that it can just be done really easily. The next flip that I would recommend is the Living Steel flip, and this one is really easy to do. It usually goes rather well. You need to just look up on your TSM crafting and see if the Riddle Steel is profitable. If it is, buy out a load of Spirits of Harmony, buy out a load of TRILLIUM bars, and just start crafting. If not, then I would recommend using the daily cooldown for Living Steel, as this roughly sells for around about 2,000 gold. Depending on your realm, double check obviously before you do this flip. Now this does work better with an alt army or with alchemy, as I like to have all 8 of my alchemists working on this. Every day I have 8 Living Steel bars, and on my realm it's quite on demand for Living Steel. But not only that, I would sell them raw, the raw material of the actual Living Steel, but I like to craft those into mounts every week because it's a lot easier to actually produce my Panther mounts, which provide me with a lot more profit. That being the case, let's get into the next one. Okay, so we're going to get into transmog right here, and my most favourite transmog farm of all is old world content such as MAUL. MAUL is probably by far one of my favourite transmog farms, as it produces me with the decent amount of transmog that I need to fill the auction house. And when it comes to selling transmog, you're going to need a variety and a buttload of transmog. Now, you can sell the lower tier transmogs that aren't worth as much to fill your auction house, but this won't necessarily mean that you're going to get the gold you desire. Try and focus on the medium to higher end transmogs and disenchant the low end. So any ones below like 100 gold, just disenchant, because then you can sell those enchanting mats on the auction house. But when it comes to actually MAUL, you're going to be getting a load of enchanting mats, fell cloth, old world herbs, which do still sell at a reasonable rate, and a lot of transmog. Now the transmog from MAUL actually sells relatively fast compared to most of the other transmogs that I actually farm up from other instances such as Strathholm, RFD and all the others. Now this one is only really a personal pick, that is why I love MAUL. For another transmog farm, I would recommend the SUNWELL, as Burning Crusade ones do really well, but it isn't really the transmog in question. Yes, you do get some decent transmog, which actually does sell for a reasonable amount, but the ones that you should be farming for are the ones that come from the plans that drop in the SUNWELL. Now the SUNWELL can actually drop a load of different plans to actually craft stuff, and if you sell these plans on the auction house or schematics, you can actually make a buttload of gold really fast, because it only needs that niche person to actually buy that one item. And this is the deal with most transmog. This is why you're going to need a variety in order to make gold with transmog. Now, this is why you fill your auction house when you're actually selling transmog, because if you have a variety, that one person that's looking for that one piece is going to find that out of all of your stuff, and then he's going to buy it. So the more stuff you have on the auction house, the more likelihood you're going to get sales, because that means the more appearances from the transmog you are providing for the customer on the auction house. So it is all a matter of supply of demand, and I would recommend filling the auction house with as much gear as you can possibly muster. A good baseline to actually go for is at least 2,000 pieces of transmog on the auction house, and this is a long game, not a short game. So more of a marathon, not a sprint. Transmog is easy to make gold on once you have gotten yourself all built up and ready for actually providing yourself with a lot of gold. I used to actually do a lot of transmog farming about a year and a half ago, but I seem to have tilted off and going on to more of crafted mounts and items such as the Panther mounts, the Vial of Sands. You get the gist. As a side note, RFD is still a very good farm in order to do as well, because it provides you with some really unique items that you can sell on the auction house, such as that axe that has a tombstone on it. These random appearances and unique ones are what are actually going to get you the actual sales in question. This is when you actually farm specific items such as the Jinsu sword from Alderman, and the Papal Fez from Alderman as well. Alderman is still a good farm in all, but I prefer RFD because I find that the blues from RFD sell faster than the Alderman stuff, and they drop easier than Alderman. Now, don't get me wrong, Alderman is a great transmogging farm location, but it does take a long time to actually farm up the required or the actual specific items you are actually searching for. That being the case, let's get into professions. Now, professions are relatively easy to actually get started on. You're going to need a bit more of a capital in order to actually get in on this market. And the one that I would like to cover is jewel crafting. Jewel crafting is relatively medium range to actually get started. You will need a nice amount of upfront cost in order to do, and you will need a couple of reputations in order to actually start making a decent amount of gold. Now obviously you can do current content gems which do sell, and they sell more or less in the short term depending on the competition. I would recommend that you actually focus on things that are not the actual current content, mainly for the fact of there will be so much competition at this point in BFA with the jewel crafting and all of that, so you're going to want to put yourself away from that area unless you can keep cancelling and re-uploading your auctions every stupid hours depending on the population of your realm. If you can get away with posting once a day and getting a ton of sales on your jewel crafting, good for you. But other than that, all of us that are on higher pop realms, we would have to literally camp the auction house just to make some sales. I usually spend most of my time actually providing myself with the mounts, and along with that, actually making gold in the long run, selling a wide variety of all the different jeweled Panther mounts. That being the case, I would recommend actually crafting the pets, the battle pets, which you can actually produce from your jewel crafting as well, because they can provide you with some easier long-term gold in the long run as well. Now don't get me wrong, I do short-term farms with, short-term crafts with jewel crafting, but it is more or less just the experience gems that I focus on, and that is it. Moving on to the next one is enchanting, and enchanting is relatively easy to do. The best one that I've found for old world enchanting mats is literally just selling the elemental force on the auction house. Opposed to that, I would actually say that current content enchants are still selling relatively well, but you would need to camp the auction house if you're on a higher pop realm. Now, the best thing about enchanting is disenchanting, so you can farm up many of the old raids and dungeons and still be able to actually make a decent amount of gold while you're leveling. Now, disenchanting all of these items will actually provide you with a load of enchanting materials which people are always in need of. Take for instance my Pit of Sauron video ages and ages ago, where I cover literally running in and resetting the instance and doing all that jazz and doing the bad hilt farm, blah blah blah, you gain a lot of greens, and if you disenchant them, it provides you with infinite dust. Now, you can actually sell this on the auction house for a really nice tidy sum, so you're always going to be able to make a decent amount of gold every hour, even if you don't obtain a battered hilt. This was covered in my optimized series, and if you haven't seen that, there is a few more actually I'm going to be working on for this year because I've got it all planned out. But that being the case, let's get on to alchemy. Alchemy is a really good one, and if you're lucky to actually obtain the actual Vial of Sands recipe, then I would recommend actually looking at the breakdown video I did on the Vial of Sands. This will give you the raw materials in order to produce this, and this provides you with a strong amount of gold when you actually sell a Vial of Sands. Now, current content flasks are always in demand, especially on Wednesdays, and personally I find that flasks, even with a high competition, still sell relatively well. This one is one of the ones where you can sell current content stuff and you can pretty much guarantee some sales even if you aren't camping the auction house. Now, I would recommend pretty stacking for this, as it actually provides me with more gold than actually just lumping it on the auction house. Now, I would recommend that with alchemy you do be careful with actually your TSM crafting and do not actually lose gold. Just make sure that you are double checking your auction houses before you're doing any of these farms. If you actually use your herbalist to actually farm up all of the materials, you shouldn't have a problem, but at the end of the day some of us are lazy and we want to craft directly from the auction house. Now, this isn't a problem, you just need to make sure that you're actually making a profit instead of losing gold, because I've done this quite a few times where I've made a miscalculation or a mistake, and this is when TSM actually really helps with that, where TSM crafting comes in and helps you with creating your flasks and everything. Now, considering old world content of flasks, I would recommend doing all of the potions for the Deepstone Oil, the Flask of Titanic Strength and the Flask of Winds. And now selling those on the auction house, which are the materials for making the Vial of Sands. Some people are lazier and just craft the true gold and then pretty much buy it off of the auction house, such as that. You can actually create the true gold and living steel if you really did want, and then sell those raw materials on the auction house. But just be prepared that living steel has a cooldown every day, and true gold you can make an infinite amount if you really wanted to, but you will run out of mats, as it is quite mat costing in the long run for making true gold. But true gold still sells for a decent amount of gold, so would recommend. Now, last and not least, we are going to get onto sniping and / BOE flipping. Now, this is where you actually set up your TSM sniping and you buy an item that is undervalued on the auction house and then relist it for a higher amount in order to actually make a profit. Now, this is what a lot of gold goblins actually do, and personally I am not as proficient in this as people like Heat and Magicus, who actually do some really good BOE flipping or battle pet flipping, so to speak, where Magicus actually buys a battle pet and then puts it on another realm to actually make loads of gold. BOE flipping only really works if you actually do it on multiple different servers, and actually Bregvids does a very good way of explaining this type of video. Now, I would recommend if you wanted to do BOE flipping that you should head over to Hecons or go over to Bregvids, as both of them do some really good videos on how to actually do this and do this to actually make a profit. If you're looking to actually trading battle pets across realms to actually produce your gold, then I would recommend going over to Magicus, as he pretty much does show you somewhat, but you would have to pay attention because I had to watch it a couple of times to actually understand how he was doing it. But These guys are really good at actually producing lots of gold, and not only that, I would say that Bregvids is greater at doing the crafting thing than most of other gold farmers out there. He's very good at doing the crafting, and I do recommend actually seeing him if you guys aren't already subscribed to him. That being the case, I would like to just state along with that, as I forgot to mention for the transmog, that probably Student Albatross is probably the best person to actually look for transmog, as he does his 100 run series, and he gives you a breakdown of what he actually gets after 100 runs, and this actually is really helpful in order to actually farm up transmog and then sell those on the auction house. Now that being the case, guys, that is what I would recommend in order to actually produce your 1 million gold. Now obviously some of these are long term things where you would need to do this for the long term and build up a higher supply of inventory on multiple different things and then sell those on the auction house. If not, then you're going to go with the shorter term things which have less gold per hour than the long terms. So it is really just a point of preference on what you want to do. So do you want to make less gold per hour but actually get faster sales, or do you want to get more gold per hour and wait a lot longer for your actual sales to come through? This is a question that you need to ask yourself in order to actually reach your goals, and I would recommend this to actually give it some thought and actually go ahead and think about what you're actually going to do. But the bottom line is just make sure that you actually set a plan in place and you stay consistent on what you're actually doing. That being the case, guys, have a lovely rest of the day, and yeah, I hope that you like this video. Now I hope you like this video, and if you want to see more like this, please feel free to give this video a like, and as always, have an awesome day, guys.
Yeah.